So there I was, standing in what could only be described as the galaxy's most pretentious conference room, watching humanity's first official diplomatic contact with alien life unfold like a particularly expensive disaster movie. The Galactic Council had decided, in their infinite wisdom, that humanity was finally ready to join the big kids' table. Lucky us. The space station they'd chosen for this momentous occasion looked like someone had taken a shopping mall and launched it into the void. Everything was chrome and glass and those weird geometric patterns that aliens apparently think scream advanced civilization. I'm Jake Morrison, by the way, and according to my official credentials, I'm a cultural attaché. According to reality, I'm a Navy SEAL who drew the short straw and got stuck babysitting diplomats in space. Commander Zephlon strode into the room like he owned the place, which, judging by the way everyone else cowered, he probably did. Picture a 7-foot-tall alligator that discovered steroids in bad fashion sense. His scales were this sickly green color that reminded me of hospital walls, and his eyes had that special kind of arrogance that comes from never having anyone punch you in the face. "Ah, the humans have arrived," Zephlon announced, his voice carrying that particular brand of condescension usually reserved for talking to toddlers or congressional hearings. How delightfully primitive. Ambassador Rebecca Walsh, bless her diplomatic heart, managed to keep smiling even as Zephlon's entourage of assorted alien yes-men snickered behind him. She was good at her job, I'll give her that. Me? I was good at mine too, which mainly involved standing perfectly still and looking like decoration while mentally cataloging every possible way to kill everyone in the room. The other species represented were a real mixed bag. There was Pip, who looked like someone had crossed a mouse with an anxiety disorder. Then there was General Krax, a bear-like creature whose military bearing was the only thing keeping him from openly trembling. A few others rounded out the crowd, but they all shared one thing in common. They were absolutely terrified of Zephlon. "I trust your journey was not too taxing for your underdeveloped nervous systems," Zephlon continued, settling into his chair with the kind of theatrical flourish that screamed I peaked in high school drama club. "We understand that space travel can be quite overwhelming for species who only recently discovered fire." Ambassador Walsh's smile tightened just a fraction. "We appreciate your concern, Commander. We're eager to begin discussions about humanity's integration into the galactic community." "Integration," Zephlon repeated, savoring the word like it was a fine wine. "Yes, well, we'll certainly discuss your future role in our little community. I think you'll find our terms quite reasonable. After all, we're nothing if not generous to lesser species." I kept my face neutral, but inside I was already running calculations. 7 hostiles, 1 obvious exit, multiple improvised weapons within arm's reach. The pen on the table looked sturdy enough to puncture a windpipe. The decorative sculpture nearby had some promising sharp edges. Old habits. "Now then," Zephlon said, producing a holographic document with the kind of ceremony usually reserved for surrender papers, "let us discuss the terms of your species' incorporation into the galactic hegemony." The document materialized above the table, and I didn't need to read alien hieroglyphs to know we were looking at a slave contract. The math was simple. Humanity provides labor, resources, and entertainment. The hegemony provides the generous service of not glassing our planet. What a bargain. As you can see, Zephlon continued, gesturing at the hologram like a game show host revealing a consolation prize, "we're offering your species the opportunity to serve in various capacities throughout the galaxy. Mining operations, agricultural development, and of course, recreational activities for our more refined citizens." Ambassador Walsh leaned forward, her diplomatic training kicking in. "Commander, I think there may be some misunderstanding about the nature of these negotiations. We were under the impression this was a mutual exchange of benefits." The laughter that erupted from Zephlon's entourage sounded like a garbage disposal eating silverware. Even little Pip managed a nervous giggle, though he looked like he might throw up immediately afterward. "Mutual exchange," Zephlon wheezed, wiping what I assumed were tears from his reptilian eyes. "Oh, my dear primitive creature, what could you possibly offer us? Your species has barely mastered interplanetary travel. You fight with chemical propellants and crude kinetic weapons. You haven't even achieved proper genetic modification. I felt my jaw tighten. Lady, if you only knew what these crude kinetic weapons could do in the right hands. But I kept my mouth shut and my posture relaxed. Cultural attaché Jake was very good at standing quietly. Your emotional responses are quite entertaining, though, Zephlon added, studying Ambassador Walsh like she was a particularly interesting bug. I'm sure our psychologists will find humans useful for stress relief experiments. General Krax shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I caught his eye for just a moment, and something passed between us. Military recognizes military, even across species lines. He saw something in me that the others missed. Good for him. Perhaps, Ambassador Walsh said carefully, we should discuss what humanity can contribute to galactic peace and prosperity. Peace, Zephlon snorted. Prosperity. You speak as if you have a choice in the matter. Let me clarify something for you, little human. Your planet was discovered 3 standard cycles ago. Since then, we've been observing your quaint little civilization. Your constant warfare, your primitive social structures. Your laughable attempts at space exploration. Frankly, we're being generous by offering you servitude instead of extermination. He leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying himself. You see, we've done this with countless species. The offer is always the same: serve willingly, or serve unwillingly. Either way you serve. The only difference is how much of your population survives the transition. I was starting to understand why General Krax looked so uncomfortable. This wasn't diplomacy, it was extortion with extra steps. And judging by the way the other species around the table avoided eye contact, they'd all heard this speech before. The negotiations, if you could call them that, continued to deteriorate faster than my patience. Zephlon had apparently decided that subtle intimidation was for amateurs and moved on to the advanced course in alien jackassery. The truly amusing part, Zephlon said, gesturing dismissively at our small human delegation, is that your species actually believes it has military capabilities worth considering. We've observed your conflicts. Humans throwing themselves at each other with such primitive savagery. It's almost endearing. Ambassador Walsh's diplomatic smile was starting to look like it was carved from stone. Commander, I think you may be underestimating human adaptability and resolve. Adaptability? Zephlon laughed, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. Yes, we've seen your adaptability. Mud-dwelling creatures who learn to swing from trees. Though I must say, your dedication to killing each other is impressive. Perhaps we'll use that in the arena sports. His gaze shifted to me, and I felt the weight of his attention like a targeting laser. Take this one, for instance. What is your function, human? Cultural attaché, I replied, keeping my voice level and boring. Just another bureaucrat in a cheap suit. Cultural attaché, Zephlon repeated, savoring the words. How delightfully vague. And what culture might that be? The culture of rolling in your own filth? The culture of murdering each other over scraps of territory? The other aliens around the table joined in with their own contributions to the comedy hour. Pip squeaked something about humans smelling funny. Another alien, who looked like a reject from a seafood restaurant, commented on our disturbing lack of proper scales. But it was Zephlon who crossed the line into personal territory. You know what I think you are, cultural attaché? I think you're a decorative pet. A little human toy brought along to make your ambassador feel important. Look at you, standing there so quietly, so obediently. Such a good little pet. Inside my head, I was running through my service record like a greatest hits album. Fallujah, Afghanistan, Syria, a dozen other places where diplomacy was measured in body counts. 23 confirmed kills in hand-to-hand combat. Expert marksman. Expert in close quarters battle. Expert in making problems disappear permanently. But cultural attaché Jake just stood there, hands clasped behind his back, looking mildly bored. I wonder, Zephlon continued, apparently on a roll, if you humans can even comprehend violence on the scale we're discussing. Your little wars, your pathetic conflicts, they're nothing compared to what happens when a species disappoints the hegemony. He stood up, his full 7-foot frame towering over the table. The Zalachi thought they were warriors too. They lasted exactly 47 standard minutes against our peacekeeping forces. The Mordani believed their technology could protect them. We turned their homeworld into a glass sphere. Beautiful. Nah, really. It catches the light from their star quite nicely. General Krax made a sound that might have been a growl. I was starting to like him. But you humans, Zephlon said, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. You're special. You're so primitive, so laughably weak, that we're going to keep you around for entertainment. A reminder of what happens when evolution gives up halfway through. That was about the time I started wondering if diplomatic immunity covered what I was about to do. Everything changed when Zephlon made his fatal error in judgment. The big lizard had been content to insult humanity in general, mock our military capabilities, and treat us like amusing pets. But then he decided to get physical. You know what I think, little ambassador? Zephlon said, rising from his chair and moving toward Ambassador Walsh with the kind of predatory grace that screamed apex predator who's never been challenged. I think you need a demonstration of what happens to species who don't show proper respect. He reached out with one clawed hand toward Walsh's face, and that's when 20 years of military training kicked in and overrode every diplomatic protocol in the book. I moved. The thing about being a Navy SEAL is that you spend a lot of time learning how to kill people very quickly and very quietly. You learn about anatomy, about leverage, about the precise amount of force needed to end a threat without wasting energy. You learn that violence, real violence, isn't about anger or showmanship. It's about efficiency. Zephlon's hand was still reaching for Ambassador Walsh when I stepped forward, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. The sound of breaking bone was sharp and clean in the suddenly silent room. He had just enough time to look surprised before I pivoted, drove my elbow into his solar plexus, and followed up with a palm strike to his throat. The second sound was much more satisfying. You know that moment in action movies where the hero delivers the perfect one-liner after dispatching the villain? In real life, it's the sound of a 7-foot-tall alien commander's skull cracking against a conference table at approximately 30 miles per hour. The silence that followed was the kind of absolute quiet you only get when a room full of people suddenly realizes their fundamental understanding of reality was completely wrong. Zephlon's body hit the floor with a wet thud that seemed to echo forever. His head was twisted at an angle that even alien anatomy couldn't make look natural. Green blood was starting to pool beneath him, and his yellow eyes stared at nothing. I straightened my tie and looked around the room at the collection of aliens who had suddenly discovered what pure, undiluted terror looked like. I think, I said conversationally, there's been a misunderstanding about the nature of these negotiations. Ambassador Walsh, to her credit, didn't even blink. Indeed, perhaps we should discuss revised terms. The other aliens were staring at me like I'd just sprouted wings and breathed fire. Little Pip had actually fainted. General Krax was looking at me with something that might have been professional admiration. The seafood reject was making a noise like a broken air conditioner. Anyone else have concerns about human military capabilities? I asked, stepping over Zephlon's body to return to my position behind Ambassador Walsh's chair. Apparently they did not. The next few minutes were what military strategists call a rapid tactical reassessment and what everyone else calls complete pandemonium. The seafood alien, who apparently went by the name Glub, started screaming something in his native language that sounded like a garbage disposal, having an existential crisis. Two of Zephlon's remaining entourage made the mistake of reaching for what looked like weapons, which gave me an excellent opportunity to demonstrate additional aspects of human military doctrine. The first one, a mantis-looking creature with delusions of adequacy, found out that humans had mastered the art of improvised weapons about the same time we discovered fire. The decorative sculpture I'd been eyeing earlier made a satisfying crunch when it connected with his compound eyes. His buddy, a gray-skinned alien who looked like he'd been designed by a committee of pessimists, learned that conference room chairs are surprisingly effective projectiles when thrown by someone who spent years perfecting the art of violence. Interesting, I commented as gray skin crumpled against the wall. Your species seems to have lost the concept of actual combat. Too much reliance on technology, not enough emphasis on practical application. The remaining aliens were pressed against the far wall like they were trying to merge with the bulkhead. General Craxax, however, had moved to what was clearly a tactical position near the door. Smart bear. "Now then," Ambassador Walsh said, settling back into her chair with the kind of calm that comes from having the galaxy's most dangerous pet standing behind you. "Shall we discuss humanity's actual role in the galactic community?" Little Pip, who had apparently recovered from his fainting spell, raised a trembling hand. "Excuse me, but are all humans like him?" He pointed at me with the kind of gesture usually reserved for natural disasters. "Oh no," Ambassador Walsh smiled. "Jake's actually quite restrained. You should see our Marines when they're having a bad day." The look of absolute horror that crossed Pip's face was worth the entire diplomatic mission. "You see, then I added helpfully, "the thing about human civilization is that we've spent our entire evolutionary history learning how to kill things that are bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than we are. We're persistence predators. We don't give up, we don't back down, and we definitely don't respond well to threats." General Crax stepped forward, his military bearing evident even in his obvious nervousness. "I think I speak for the remaining representatives when I say we may have made some serious miscalculations about human capabilities." "You think?" I asked, nudging Zephlon's body with my foot. "Your peacekeeping forces that took out the Zalachi in 47 minutes? I'm curious how they do against a Marine expeditionary unit, or a SEAL team. Or honestly, a particularly motivated group of Army Rangers with a weekend pass." Ambassador Walsh leaned forward, her diplomatic instincts taking over. "What my colleague is trying to say is that humanity has some unique perspectives on conflict resolution that might benefit the galactic community." "Conflict resolution," Glub gurgled, staring at the three bodies scattered around the conference room. "Is that what you call this?" "This," I gestured at the carnage. "This is what we call opening negotiations. You want to see conflict resolution? Try threatening Earth. We'll show you what happens when 8 billion humans decide they don't like you." The truth was starting to dawn on them, and it was beautiful to watch. These aliens had built their entire civilization on the assumption that technological superiority meant military superiority. They'd forgotten that wars aren't won by the species with the best spaceships. They're won by the species that's willing to do whatever it takes to survive. "Perhaps," General Crax said carefully, "we should discuss new arrangements for galactic peacekeeping operations." Ambassador Walsh smiled that diplomatic smile that was rapidly becoming my favorite expression. "I think that's an excellent idea, General. Jake, would you care to share your thoughts on effective deterrent strategies?" I looked around the room at the collection of aliens who had suddenly discovered they were prey animals in a galaxy that had just remembered what apex predators looked like. "Well," I said, "I think we're going to get along just fine." 6 months later, I was sitting in what used to be Zephlon's office, feet up on what used to be Zephlon's desk, reading what used to be Zephlon's intelligence reports. The irony wasn't lost on me that my new official title was Galactic Peace Coordinator. Apparently, once you demonstrate that humans are the galaxy's premier violent specialists, everyone suddenly wants you in charge of maintaining order. The transformation had been swift and, honestly, pretty hilarious. Within hours of the diplomatic incident on the space station, word had spread throughout the galaxy that the humans weren't quite what they seemed. Within days, 3 separate species had contacted Earth directly to request human military advisors to help with their regional security concerns. It turned out that the galactic hegemony had been running a protection racket on a cosmic scale. Most of the advanced civilizations had traded their warrior instincts for technological comfort centuries ago. They'd become sheep in a galaxy full of wolves, and the wolves had been running things for way too long. Ambassador Walsh knocked on my door, which was amusing since she technically outranked me in the diplomatic hierarchy. But titles mean less when you're the person other species have nightmares about. "How are you adjusting to your new role?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Oh, I said, gesturing at the stack of reports. "Turns out galactic peace is a lot easier to maintain when everyone's afraid of you." Who knew? The reports made for interesting reading. The Zalachi, those warriors who'd lasted 47 minutes against the hegemony's forces, had thrown off their oppressors in about 47 seconds, once they learned humans were backing them. The Mordani had rebuilt their homeworld's defenses and were now requesting human military contractors to train their new peacekeeping forces. The hegemony's former territories are requesting integration into the Terran Defense Network, Walsh reported. Apparently, they prefer our version of protection to the previous arrangement. Shocking, I said. It's almost like species prefer being defended rather than extorted. Little Pip bounced into the office, which was his new habit since becoming humanity's unofficial galactic ambassador. He'd taken to following me around like a particularly enthusiastic puppy, which was both endearing and slightly disturbing. Jake, he squeaked. The hegemony's remaining forces just surrendered the Andromeda sector. They said they'd rather negotiate with Ambassador Walsh than face the skull-breaking monster in direct combat. I looked at Walsh, who was trying very hard not to laugh. Skull-breaking monster? It's apparently your official designation in their military reports, she said. Right below species of mass destruction and diplomatic nightmare. The best part was the aftermath. Once the galaxy realized that humans were essentially a planet full of apex predators who'd learned to build spaceships, our entire relationship with the galactic community changed overnight. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be our friend. Trade agreements appeared out of nowhere. Technology transfers happened at light speed. Even the most advanced civilizations started asking for our advice on military matters. General Krax had been promoted to Supreme Allied Commander, which mainly involved coordinating with human military advisors and trying to explain to other species why attacking Earth was a really bad idea. He'd taken to the job with the enthusiasm of someone who'd finally found his calling. You know what the funny part is? I said, leaning back in my chair. Earth was never actually in danger. Walsh raised an eyebrow. How do you figure? Think about it, I said. Any species that tries to invade Earth has to deal with 8 billion humans who've spent their entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of warfare. We're not just apex predators, we're apex predators who've learned to cooperate. That's not a military problem. That's an extinction-level event waiting to happen. The truth was, the galaxy had been running a protection racket on the one species that didn't need protection. We weren't potential victims, we were the thing that other species needed protection from. The hegemony had just been too arrogant to realize it. My communication device chimed with an incoming message from Earth. Admiral Peterson, my old commanding officer, appeared on the holographic display with the kind of grin that usually preceded something involving explosives. Jake, you magnificent bastard, he said. Congratulations on your promotion. I just got word that the Galactic Senate wants to establish a permanent human peacekeeping force. They're offering us our own sector to administrate. Let me guess, I said. They want us to be the galaxy's hall monitors. More like the galaxy's enforcers, Peterson replied. Apparently, the concept of mutual assured destruction is a foreign concept to most alien species. They want us to teach them about deterrence theory. I looked around my office, at the reports from dozens of species requesting human military assistance, at the diplomatic communications from civilizations that had spent centuries in fear finally asking for help, at the evidence of a galaxy that had forgotten what peace through strength actually meant. Well, I said, I guess somebody's got to keep the peace. Might as well be us. After all, we'd been practicing for this job for our entire species' history. We just hadn't realized the final exam was going to be in space. The universe, it turned out, was a lot more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Lucky for everyone else, it was also full of humans.